Hello everybody, here we are back again, Two Fit Docs. So this week's been an exciting week, hasn't it? A lot of stuff going on in the news. We had some email messages from some of our members, and they were wondering our thoughts on the study that had just come out this week from the Lancet. Very prestigious medical journal, and it says dietary carbohydrate intake and mortality, a prospective cohort study and meta-analysis. So what does all that mean, right? And you've probably seen a lot of people in our space have been rebutting this and talking about it, and we're going to go through kind of some of our processes when we look at a study. How are we looking at it, and how do we decide what is a good study and what's a bad study?
Right. That was the crux of it there, right, for me. So, Keith read the title of this paper. Well, that's not how the public is presented this paper. The public is presented the paper with, low-carb diets will make you die early. So, obviously, catches your attention. This study was actually brought to my attention by some people that were following us. So it's like awesome. I love that.
Thank you.
Since then been all over the news.
Oh my gosh.
But my first thought when I saw the headline, I thought, give me the paper and let me see the methods they followed. I knew in my gut this was going to be one of those association type studies that draws these conclusions out of nowhere. And so the methods of this study, can I go into this right now?
Sure.
So there are. It's hard to believe that a scientific study might be flawed, but they often are. And when we're looking at nutrition studies, there's a lot of flaws because it's hard to test what people are eating. So on one side of the spectrum, we have things like questionnaires that have you recall what you ate over the past few years a lot of times.
That's pretty reliable.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And then we have the randomized clinical trials, where you take a group of people, you randomly break them into a control group and a test group, you feed these people a specific diet, these people eat whatever they usually do, and then at the end of a set period of time you compare them to see what health changes have taken place. So those are totally different ends of the spectrum. Well, this study in the Lancet that came out, this was one of those over here. It utilized a questionnaire, 61 questions, and I think over a 25-year period they were given 2 questionnaires. Am I correct on that?
I think twice in that time span, yeah. 66 questions.
Right.
Yeah.
So they were asking, it is literally asking these participants to recall what they ate a month ago on Tuesday for dinner. What did you have?
I have no idea, and I eat the same things all the time. So
right. So just pointing out the fact that it's absurd.
Right.
And I'll tell you what. So you're one of the 2 Fit Docs, right? So
right.
If you happen to have a pizza on that night and like some M&M peanuts, are you going to report that to the examiner?
Well, I'd be truthful with you guys, but I would not be truthful with them if that's what I was known for. I think because you're always going to downplay the things that you know are bad.
Right.
And you're also going to tend to kind of figure out what the examiners want to hear, and you inflate those things.
Sure, it's human nature.
Right.
We underreport what's kind of socially not acceptable.
Yep. So we had the questionnaire, so that's a bad design. That's a really bad design. Also in this study, so they split people into 5 groups. They called them quintiles. So the quintile that had the quote-unquote low carbohydrate intake diet, which was 37%, we'll talk about that in a minute, this quintile also happened to be most likely to be overweight, have a high BMI, least likely to exercise. They were smokers and they had diabetes.
Right. Not everyone, but they were most likely to have those.
Right. So this is like the least healthy group out of 5, and also happened to be the group that.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Right. A coincidence.
Right. And this is an all-cause mortality study. So if you fell down and hit your head and you died, okay, that counts, right? That's mortality. So that goes into the study. But so they kind of shove those 4 things off the side and say these people died more likely because they had 37% of their calories from carbohydrate.
Yeah, so those are called confounding variables. So we're looking at a nutrition study that's supposed to be comparing low carb to high carb diets, but we are not taking those confounding variables into account and basically saying that these people died early because they ate low carb diets, not in any way related to the fact that they came into the study having diabetes, that they were overweight, that they didn't exercise, and that they smoked.
That's right. Also, let's talk about definitions a little bit. When you look at a study, you've got to look at how do they define something. Now, they define 37% of carbohydrates as a low-carb diet. I don't think that we would call it that, because
We would not.
At 2,000 calories, that's 740 calories of that is carbs. That's nearly 200 grams of carbohydrate. That is no way a low-carbohydrate diet. And if I wanted to make a study, if I wanted to bash the low-carb group, I would say that the standard American diet's 60% carbs. I would do a study that's 50% carbs, and I would say, because it's low carbohydrate then, right?
Yeah.
I would do my study, and I would find that people wouldn't lose weight, and I would say the low carb diet doesn't work. Okay, and that's how you do it. Research can be very sneaky. We did research in college. I mean, we were exposed to this. We understand how that works. Also, we've got contradictory studies. This study came out in the Lancet.
Yes.
I already said, right? Very prestigious journal. Last year, a year ago, the Lancet published the PURE study, one of the largest studies ever undertaken for dietary intake and health benefits. So let's read a little bit from this. This is a year ago. Higher carbohydrate intake was associated with an increased risk of total mortality. Okay. Right. Intake of total fat and each type of fat was associated with the lower risk of mortality. Right. And finally, higher saturated fat intake was associated with a lower risk of stroke. Completely contradictory to what this associative study shows. And yet, where do you think all the press is going? Here?
Right.
Or there?
Well, and I will, so that was published in the Lancet. This one that we're dealing with right now, a week ago, was published in the Lancet. They are absolutely 100% contradictory. Yep. Just to make really the point, I think that maybe is the best for the general public, is that we really can't get caught up in headlines. There is a media's agenda to make you click on something or read something. So I just wanted to point out the PURE study that Keith just talked about, that came out last year, here almost to the day, right now, in the end of August. Here was a headline that I pulled up, and I'll show this to you on screen, just to show you the contradiction. This says, huge new study casts doubt on conventional wisdom about fats and carbs. And it starts off with, fats, once a dirty word when it comes to diet, have now been regaining, moving toward respectability. So this was the headline a year ago saying, hey, fats are okay. And then this is one of the headlines I pulled this past week. It says, low-carb, high-fat diets could knock years off of lifespan. And then underneath it says, half of your daily calories should come from carbs, such as pasta. So I just want to make the point that we can't get caught up in the sensationalism of media.
Right. And to go a little bit further into that, media bias and journalistic bias is just hugely rampant. If you listen to CNN or Wall Street, you read the Wall Street Journal or some of these other things, you're going to get probably a slanted piece based on whatever that journalist issue is. This is just an example of that. Here's a study where they, from UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, where they did a study on mice, and they found out that these mice, high intake of fat made them live longer. Okay, and here's a news report of that same study where the reporter takes it upon herself to report this stuff, but she goes on to say The goal of studies like this isn't to suggest that we should all live on high-fat diets. So she's taken upon herself to tell you what the goal of the study is. And she also says that if trying to live on butter and multivitamins sounds like a bad idea to you, that's because it's an extremely bad idea. The goal of the research is to better understand the pathways that affect aging and health. With enough data, scientists may eventually find ways of addressing those pathways that don't involve living on jars of coconut oil. So she's a coconut oil hater. That's too bad.
Seems like it, yeah.
And just because we brought up coconut
I
oil.
was thinking that, yep.
Yeah. So this one came out just recently. One of our viewers actually cued me into this. This was a Harvard professor who gave a presentation. I think she was from Germany. She, first of all, you can see the title of this. It says a Harvard professor just busted the myth that coconut oil is good for you, calling it pure poison. So they use the word myth in there, so obviously there's a bias right there right away. And she says some things that are just not factual in here, like it exclusively contains saturated fatty acids, ones that can clog the coronary arteries. And we all know that that's not how that works. She should know that.
Right. Well, and I've covered that quite a bit on my other YouTube channel that I have here, and we'll point to that video that I have on saturated versus unsaturated fats. But it is a lot of sensationalism and a lot of bias that we still have to overcome. The fact is that low-carb, high-fat diet saved your life, and I have no problems stating that. And it has added quality to our life that I can't even have imagined a few years ago. You're on an okay path.
I believe that, and to thousands of people who watch this, many of you are doing the same thing, and you're seeing the same results.
Yeah.
So you know what works.
Yeah, and that creates a target.
Yeah.
So
whenever success is
is an easy target.
An easy target.
Yeah, because we had to read a 30-page paper to rebut a single headline.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I hope that gives you some food for thought.
Yeah. Put your mind at ease too.
Yeah.
You're on the right track.
You are. All right. Hey, so happy to have you watch. Thanks so much for being part of our lives here on YouTube, and please subscribe. We'll be back real soon with another video.
I'll see you later.